Hello, welcome class to Module 3, Consumer Behavior. After completing this module, you should be able to list the 5 stages of the consumer buying decision process, define the 3 types of consumer decision making, identify 5 situational influences that may affect the consumer buying decision process, summarize the 6 psychological influences that may affect the consumer buying decision process. Describe the 7 social influences that may affect the consumer buying decision process. Define consumer misbehavior. So, buying behavior and consumer buying behavior. Buying behavior is the broad term. It includes businesses, governments, and includes purchasing anything. Consumer buying behavior, on the other hand, narrows the focus to personal and household purchases. This is the behavior marketers study most intensely because it drives B2C, which is business to consumer commerce. So the consumer buying decision process, every purchase, big or small, follows these 5 stages. There's a problem, consumer realizes a need or want. An internal and external research begins, comparing options using criteria, choosing, negotiating, and buying. And then, are we satisfied with it? Or is there dissonance? So post-purchase evaluation is when we think, did we do well with that? Or could we have done better? Could we have bought something better? When we're recognizing a need and seeking answers, we see the stage 1 is when we recognize the problem, which is we perceive a gap between our current state and a desired state. This triggers the entire buying process. Example, your internal, maybe you're hungry, it's lunchtime, you're thirsty, it's been hot all day, or maybe you're just bored. And then externally, maybe you saw an ad on social media, or maybe your friend recommended, hey, go see this movie, it's really cool. Then stage 2 is the information search overview. So you've got a need is recognized. You already know that maybe you're bored, you want to go see a movie. So then consumers actively seek information to fill that gap. Search takes 2 primary forms, internal and external. So you're thinking about, oh, my friend told me that movie was pretty good. Externally, you're looking and searching online at the reviews or maybe. Stage 2A also includes, as we said, the internal search, retrieving knowledge already stored in memory, used for routine, low involvement purchases when past experience is sufficient. So they use the example of a coffee order. External search, actively seeking information from outside sources, used when internal knowledge is insufficient or purchase risk is high. So friends and family, reviews, ads, websites. Stage 3 is where we evaluate our alternatives. So concept 1, consideration set. The group of brands a consumer actually considers when making a purchase decision. So for example, back to when they were looking for coffee. There are different types of coffee shops. Maybe they just want coffee from a gas station. There's many places that sell coffee. So this is where we consider what kind of coffee am I looking for? So they filter down from all available options formed by awareness, memory, and prior experience. And then marketers fight to get into this consideration set. Then we have the concept 2, evaluative criteria, the standards and specification used to compare products within the consideration set. Every consumer weighs different factors. So objectively, let's say a coffee from 7-Eleven will cost significantly less than a coffee from, let's say, Starbucks. But are the sizes the same? Uh, Subjective is what do we feel? So subjective is what you think, and or maybe you're thinking about how others think of it. Like maybe I feel that a Starbucks coffee is better than a 7-Eleven coffee, or vice versa. Maybe I would rather go to 7-Eleven and save my money, or maybe it tastes better than Starbucks. Either way, that's how you would think of it. So if you look down here, they have a real world example where you can um, review it, and they use cell phones, buying a new phone. Stage four is the purchase. You choose the product, select the product or brand based on the evaluation stage. You look at the price, terms, the delivery, especially for big or high involvement purchases. So, especially a cell phone, you're going to be putting a lot of money into that phone. You want to make sure everything that you're asking for is there, and also that the price is within what you were looking for. You make the transaction in store, online, or through subscription. Even though you've already made the purchase, you think that's the end of the buying process. No, you also have to go beyond into the post-purchase evaluation. Were you satisfied with that phone? If you're dissatisfied, why? And how are you going to address uh, those things that you weren't satisfied with? Are you going to return it? Are you just going to make a complaint? Maybe you'll make a public review, or maybe you'll decide, well, I don't really want to go back and purchase that phone ever again. I've decided to change my phone preferences. One thing you have to think about here is the cognitive dissonance. So, buyer's remorse is post purchase doubt about whether the right choice was made, especially common with high involvement expensive purchases. So, these could be like jewelry, high end jewelry, um, vehicles. Automobile purchases are always come with the possibility of buyer's remorse or cognitive dissonance because maybe you really wanted X vehicle, but they only had Y. So, but they told you, hey, but this Y vehicle has exactly the same things that you're looking for in X vehicle. But still, you feel like, hey, I spent all that money. Why did I spend that much money? And now I don't like my car. Here we have the types of consumer decision making, and just to note, not every purchase requires the same level of mental effort. You have low effort, routinized response behavior. These are your habitual purchasing with minimal thought or deliberation. You need toothpaste, you need cleaning chemicals, or you just need milk. That's your low effort. Then you go into moderate effort. Some comparison and consideration occur, but the search is not extensive or exhaustive. Used when trying something new in a familiar category, choosing a new brand of cereal after briefly scanning the aisle options. Maybe you use a certain laundry detergent and you want to try a different one. This is also a moderate effort um, decision making level. Then you go down to high effort, extended decision making, maximum cognitive effort, extensive research, comparison, and deliberation reserved for high cost, high risk, or unfamiliar purchases with significant consequences. Again, buying a car or a laptop, even a house, weeks of reviews, comparisons, and visits. You're looking for what you're going to spend X amount of dollars over the amount that you would usually spend, and you're going to use a significant amount of your funds. So you want to make sure you do a high effort consumer decision making plan in order to make sure that that purchase is worth the money that you're putting out. An unplanned consumer decision making behavior is impulse buying, spontaneous unplanned purchase triggered by emotion, visual display, or in the moment desire, no prior intention. The product creates its own demand. So they have an example of a candy bar at the checkout stand. You see it there, Snickers. Oh, I want one of those. Or maybe there's other types of impulse buying when you're just scrolling online and then you go onto your favorite retailer, maybe it's Amazon, and you say, hey, maybe I need this, maybe I need that, maybe I need this, that. And then you press buy, but you really didn't need that. Those are all examples of impulse buying. How involved is the consumer? Level of involvement shapes the depth of the buying process, from quick grabs to deep research. So, concept level of involvement. The degree of importance and interest a consumer places on a product or purchase decision, it determines how much mental energy and time they invest. So there's low involvement and then there's high involvement. High equals more research, more comparison, and more risk. Then we have the type 1, ongoing enduring involvement, a long-term ongoing interest in a product category that exists regardless of a specific purchase need. The consumer is permanently engaged, always browsing, researching, and comparing. A sneakerhead example they have here is a sneakerhead who constantly researches new Nike and Jordan releases, even when they have no plans to buy right now. Always in the market, psychologically. Type 2 is the temporary situational involvement, a temporary spike in interest driven by a specific purchase, situation, or context. It appears when needed and fades once the decision is made. An example here is a traveler who deeply researches hotels, reviews, and room comparisons only when planning a specific trip, but normally doesn't think about hotels at all. Triggered by context, disappears after purchase. An insight to think about is the higher the involvement, the more effort marketers must invest in education, persuasion, and trust building, because the consumer is doing their homework. Keep that in mind. Situational influences on the buying process. The right place, right time, right mood, environment matters. So this includes your physical surroundings, the store layout, lighting, music, cleanliness, and product displays influence behavior. For example, IKEA's maze-like layout maximizes exposure for products. Social surroundings. Who is present when the purchase is made directly shapes choices. Shopping with friends versus alone changes what and how much consumers buy. The time of day. Time pressures affects decisions. Rush consumers gravitate toward familiar brands. Time of day, day of week, and seasonality all shift purchase behavior. So Christmas time, you see everybody in the stores buying gifts, and maybe around the summertime, you see them, they're just purchasing for vacations and not so much as they would during the holiday season. What is the reason for the purchase? Are you buying for yourself or is this a gift? Choosing a budget wine for yourself, but a premium bottle when gifting. How is the buyer's mood and the conditions? Emotional state, health, and energy level influence purchase decisions. Happy shoppers spend more and are more receptive to brand messaging. What goes on inside the consumer's mind? These are the 6 psychological influences on the buying decision process, invisible forces that shape every purchase. So, perception. How do we see that product? How do we select, organize, and interpret stimuli from the world around us to form our reality? Our attitudes, learned predispositions towards products, brands, and ideas, favorable or unfavorable. Maybe your parents used a certain cleaning product and they told you this is the only cleaning product that works and it'll get rid of all the germs. If you use another one, you'll get sick. So this is where attitudes come in. Motivation, internal drives that push us toward action from basic needs to complex desires. And we use the Maslow's hierarchy of needs here. I'll let you guys research that. That's where you have your basic needs, safety, security, then food, water, all of those needs on a pyramid. Personality and self-concept, individual traits and identity. Consumers buy products that reflect who they are or want to be. Learning behavior changes driven by information experience. Repetition builds brand familiarity and trust. And then lifestyles, activities, interests, and opinions, AIOs, the pattern of living that shapes what people buy and why. And these are also called psychographics. Perception, how consumers see the world. What is perception? The process by which individuals select, organize, and interpret information inputs to create a meaningful picture of the world. There is the step one is selection, selective exposure. We notice only some stimuli from the overwhelming stream of information around us. Selective distortion. We twist information to fit our existing beliefs and expectations or narratives. Selective retention. We remember only what matters or aligns with our attitudes. Step two is perceptual organization. We group stimuli into recognizable patterns using mental frameworks and prior knowledge. Brands use logos, colors, and packaging to trigger instant automatic pattern recognition, and consumers fill in gaps. The mind completes incomplete pictures based on what it expects to see. Then there's the final step, which is interpretation. We assign meaning based on prior experience, culture, and personal context. Two people can see the same ad very differently. Interpretation is never universal. Marketers craft messages to guide interpretation toward the intended brand meaning. Marketer takeaway. You don't control what consumers see. You control what you give them to perceive. Design every touch point to shape the right selection, organization, and interpretation. Learning. Changes in a person's behavior caused by information and experience. Consumers learn from direct experience with the product, observation of others, and marketing communications. Shapes brands associations over time. Repeated exposure builds familiarity and preference. Repetition builds familiarity and trust, a core principle behind advertising frequency and brand consistency. Negative experiences are learned quickly and are hard to unlearn. One bad interactions can undo years of brand equity. Direct experience, observation, marketing, communications. Attitudes, a learned predisposition to respond consistently to a product, brand, or idea in a favorable or unfavorable way. Attitude skill, tools that measure attitude strength and direct toward a product or brand. This is the Net Promoter Scale, NPS, key attitude metric. How likely are you to recommend us to a friend? And they give you that 0 to 10. Or most, very likely, not likely. All right. Who we are shapes what we buy. The final three psychological influences, deeply personal and powerful. Personality, a set of internal traits and behaviors that make a person unique and relatively consistent across situations. Brands develop personalities too. Harley Davidson equals the rebel. Apple equals creative. Nike equals driven. Personality match between brand and consumer is a primary driver of long-term brand loyalty. Consumers choose brands that feel like an extension of who they are. Self-concept, how a person sees themselves. Research shows consumers buy products that are consistent with their self-image. Actual self-concept, who I am right now. Ideal self-concept, who I want to be. The gap between actual and ideal self drives aspirational buying, purchasing products that bridge the identity gap. Buying luxury brands signals the ideal self to others and to oneself. Lifestyles, a person's pattern of living expressed through AIOs. Psychographic segmentation divides markets by lifestyle, going beyond demographics to understand how consumers live. Lifestyle marketing connects products to the whole life context of the consumer, not just a single need. Lululemon targets the active wellness lifestyle, yoga, running, mindfulness as an identity. We are social creatures, and so are our purchases. Seven major groups of social influences on consumer behavior. Roles, the parts people play in social situations, shape what they buy in each context. Family, the most powerful social unit, shapes consumer habits from childhood onward. Reference groups. Are person y- groups a person uses as a guide for values, attitudes, and buying decisions. Digital influences, social media, online reviews, and UGC now show purchasing globally in real time. Now shape purchasing globally in real time. Opinion leaders, trusted individuals who disproportionately influence others' purchase decisions. Social classes, income, education, and occupation create distinct buying patterns and preferences. Culture and subcultures, shared values, beliefs, and customs that define how groups approach buying. Social influence is everywhere and has never been more powerful than in the age of social media and digital connectivity. Family is the most powerful social influence in buying. Roles, the parts people play in social situations affects what products they buy for each role. A person buys differently as a parent, student, employee, or athlete. Family influences a consumer socialization. Family is where consumer habits begin. Consumer socialization, the process by which children learn to be consumers through observation and experience with family members. The buying unit, four key roles. Gatekeeper controls info flow. Influencer shapes opinion. Decider makes the final call. Buyer executes the purchase. These roles can be held by different people in the same household. Buying a family car. The child is the influencer. That's the one who wants to shapes the opinions. Gatekeeper and decider is the parent. And then the spouse is the influencer and the buyer. Marketers must reach all roles, not just the buyer. Understanding family dynamics is key to multi-generational marketing strategies. Reference groups. Any group a person uses as guide for values, attitudes, and behavior in consumer decisions. Membership groups. Clubs, coworkers, friends. Norms are felt directly through participation. Aspirational groups. Luxury brand buyers, elite athletes, celebrities drive aspirational purchasing. And then disassociative groups, groups you do not want to be associated with. Consumers actively avoid their products and signals. Digital influences of consumers say 93% of consumers say online reviews impact their purchase decision. The digital crowd has replaced traditional word of mouth at scale. Social media posts and influencer content shape brand perception instantly and at scale. UGC is more trusted than brand ads. Authentic pure voice wins. Online communities and subreddits function as powerful modern reference groups with strong norms. Algorithm driven feeds create personalized influence bubbles. What you see shapes what you buy. In the digital age, reference groups have gone global and instant. The bigger social picture. Opinion leaders. A person with a reference group who holds special influence due to expertise, personality, or status. Modern leaders, influencers, YouTubers, podcasters. Brands partner with them to access trusted audiences. Authenticity, celebrity status in today's market. A fitness influencer with 500K followers recommends a supplement brand. Instant credibility with their community. Social class, a ranking of people into higher or lower positions of respect based on income, education, occupation, and wealth. There's the upper class, middle class, working class. Each class has distinct brand preferences and media habits. Marketers must match message, channel, and product to the right class. Culture and subcultures, accumulated values, knowledge, beliefs, and customs shared by a society, the most powerful environmental influence on buying behavior. Groups with culture with distinct values and buying behavior critical for targeting targeted marketing. Sorry about that. Key U.S. subcultures: African American, Hispanic, Asian American. Insight: culture is the invisible framework shaping every preference in marketing. When consumers cross the line, acts that violate norms, laws, or expectations in the marketplace, and why marketers must understand them. Shoplifting, the most common form of consumer misbehavior, costs U.S. retailers over $100 billion annually, affecting prices for all consumers. Organized retail crime, coordinated theft by groups of or networks targeting inventory for resale, or more sophisticated and damaging than individual shoplifting, a growing law enforcement priority. Consumer fraud, returning used items, faking receipts, or misrepresenting purchases to gain refunds or benefits, cost retailers billions in return fraud annually. Piracy, unauthorized copying or distribution of copyrighted material, music, movies, softwares, ebooks, billions in lost revenue for creators and publishers annually. Abusive customers, verbal abuse, harassment, or threats directed at store employees, a growing retail and hospitality challenge with serious legal and HR implications. Motivations for misbehavior, rationalization, economic pressure, thrill seeking, and more are explored on the next slide. Why do customers misbehave? 6 key motivations for consumer misbehavior: justification, rationalization, telling oneself the behavior isn't really wrong, reframing the act to reduce moral conflict. So maybe somebody will say, hey, I'm just doing this, but it's not like the store doesn't make a lot of money. Economic reasons, financial pressure, desperation, or simply this desire for personal gain without payment. Peer acceptance, that behavior is seen as a normal or even expected within the individual social group or circle. Thrill seeking, the excitement or adrenaline rush from getting away with breaking a rule, risks as reward. Perceived low risk, the belief that they are unlikely to be caught, reported, or face meaningful consequences. Superiority complex, feeling smarter than the system, outsmarting security, policy, or social norms as a point of pride. The 5-stage buying process applies to virtually every consumer purchase, from gum to a car. Involvement level determines how much mental effort a consumer dedicates to the decision-making process. Situational, psychological, and social forces all converge on every single purchase decision simultaneously. Well, I can't talk. I apologize, class. Family, reference groups, and digital influencers are among the most powerful shapers of buying behavior. Consumer misbehavior is a real costly challenge for businesses and a fascinating area of marketing study. That's the end of module 3, and we'll end for now. Have a good evening.